Welcome back. Well, 3 years ago, Stephanie Trethewey uprooted her life and moved to a tiny community in Tasmania with her husband and their 6-month-old. As a new mum, the former broadcast journalist, formerly our colleague, had no idea just how isolating that move could be.
So Stephanie started an online community to help mothers like yourself get the support they need in rural areas. And we're thrilled to say Steph joins us now from Dunnorlan and Tassie. Steph,
Morning.
How are you, mate?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Well, look, 3 years ago, you packed up, stopped chasing, bad guys down the street with cameras, and went to live on a farm. What's that transition been like for you?
Oh, you know what? It was not as romantic as I thought it would be. Look, the transition hit me like an absolute ton of bricks. I was not at all prepared. Moved here with our little baby boy, and yeah, rural motherhood has been, I guess, the biggest challenge I've ever gone through in my life. Makes my time in TV look like a piece of cake, I think.
Wow.
It's really interesting you say that, because I think a lot of new mums, wherever they are, even, in built-up inner city areas, can feel really isolated when a newborn comes along, can't they? Tell us why that is compounded in rural areas. What was your experience?
There are so many personal and seasonal pressures when you're a farmer, and I didn't know what it was going to be like to be a farmer until I married one. And you really marry the land. I joke about it, but I literally married the land, not just my husband. We work where we live where we work. It is just so much pressure. And then you talk about the geographical isolation, the lack of local services. There are so many things that I took for granted in the city that I had no idea just how much I would struggle here. And, I had this moment when my little boy, he was about 8, 9 months old, and I remember vividly getting quite frustrated and feeling quite resentful. And I had this moment where I thought, if they say it takes a village to raise a child, then where the hell is mine? And that's where the idea for Motherland was born.
Okay, so then you created this podcast. It came out of this idea of feeling isolated, that there must be other women or people in your situation in rural areas that need this. So how's that been going, and how's the reaction been to it?
It's been incredible. We're a not-for-profit now. I have an incredible team behind the scenes supporting me, but it's been a one-woman show for so long. So I started the podcast. We're nudging 500,000 downloads and telling real and raw stories of rural motherhood. Stories that, women in the city haven't heard before, stories that women on the land haven't heard before. And then it's taken on a life of its own. So it started as a side hustle. And then I launched Motherland Village about 12 months ago, which is Australia's first online rural mothers group program. I don't know about you, but, when I had my baby in the city in Melbourne, I was automatically allocated a mothers group. And again, just a luxury I took for granted. Over 50% of rural mums don't have that luxury. So I decided to do something about it.
Stephanie, it's so interesting and so important too, because we're talking about the mental health of people in this country. We know the strain that has been out there in the farming community and in the rural community, and the mental health of floods and droughts and everything that's been happening to the land. So are you getting that sort of feedback and reaction of people really needing this in a time which has been so tough for them?
Absolutely. Like, we're coming into harvest for a lot of families at the moment. It's a really busy time of the year. And, rural mums in particular are the glue that holds households together. Like, we're the linchpins behind the scenes that are keeping the wheels turning, raising little kids. I've got a 3-year-old and a 2-year-old, and it's tough. But I think also the word resilient gets thrown around a lot, particularly in mainstream media. It's almost this pressure, because you're a farmer, to be resilient, to just cop it. And I think we need to stop using that word so much, because it does put pressure to be okay. And it's that whole saying it's okay not to be. And it can be incredibly hard on the land, but at the same time, I wouldn't swap it for anything. So
wow, that's awesome.
It's interesting. Resilience doesn't just grow on trees. You can't just pluck it and apply it to your life, can you? Which is, even more relevant to what you're experiencing out there in the bush, in a rural community. I'm just reflecting on what you said about, some of these stories we haven't heard. Some of the people you've spoken to are shedding new light on what it is to be a rural mother. Is there a particular story or a particular mother who has really struck you and sort of made you reflect on that?
There are so many stories. Infertility in the bush is a major one. I've spoken to several women, who've been trying to have babies for 4 or 5 years, and their inability to access healthcare services locally, having to travel interstate. I mean, most rural women, a lot of them I speak to, have to leave home at a time when most of us are nesting, when we're heavily pregnant. They're actually uprooting their lives and having to move to town or move to a city for the month leading up to their births. And, for me, when I moved here, I just didn't understand that. I didn't know that. So there are so many stories. We've just clocked 150 episodes. So, you know, maybe you guys can on the weekend or something go through those 150 because they're just incredible. And yeah, it just really shines a light on these incredible rural families.
What can happen in these spaces now? What needs to happen to support families and support mothers in these regional communities?
I think a little less talk and a little more action. Look, I've got a mouth on me. I'm here to advocate for rural mums. I love advocating for rural families, but I think when it comes to our healthcare service, severely lacking. You know, when you talk about mental health, I shared recently a bit of a private moment. Last year, I sought some help from a counsellor who only visits our local town once a fortnight. The wait list was 8 weeks long.
Wow.
I rocked up to my appointment to be told, oh, sorry, Dal, we've booked you in under podiatry instead of psychology. I mean, come on. So when you talk about access to care in the bush, we need to do better. And I think, you know, government healthcare systems need to do better preventatively. Why are we waiting till rural mums and dads and families and people are at breaking point? It's not good enough. We need to think about, you know, preventative measures and getting in there before things get so tough, before families on the land are battling. So, yeah, I'm really passionate about that.
You're such a great advocate for mums in the bush, Stephanie. Good on you. Congratulations on the success you're having with this podcast and, you know, in essence, connecting other mums in rural parts of Australia too. You're doing great work.
Thanks,
Thank you so
Stephanie.
much for joining us. We'll see you again soon. And you can check out Stephanie's online forum, Motherland, at motherlandaustralia.com.au. And if this segment has raised any concerns for you, please contact Lifeline 13 11 14. She's doing terrific work.
Amazing. What an amazing thing to do.
Really great.
All right, still to come.